Stephen Tibbs.
Mr Deputy Speaker, and I echo the final sentence of the honourable member for Ribble Valley, but not very much else. The Prime Minister was understandably very anxious to hold the general election before this bill was scrutinised. And as we go through the bill in detail, the impact of his agreement on the UK is going to become apparent. And the agreement is going to do a lot of damage to our constitution and to our economy. And members opposite are going to have a lot of explaining to do to their constituents as those impacts become apparent in the years ahead. I just want to raise 2 points, Sir Roger, in this debate. Firstly, to deal quite briefly with an important subject I raised with the Prime Minister in the House on the 19th of October. I asked him if he understood the worries of manufacturing exporters set out by their organisation, Make UK, about new rules of origin checks and other red tape his deal will impose upon them. The Prime Minister, in answering my question, said, and I quote, "The reason I'm not worried about that is that there are no new rules of origin checks." But that is not what his deal says. Paragraph 22 of the political declaration, which he negotiated, refers to, and I quote, "appropriate and modern accompanying rules of origin" for the proposed free trade agreement, in direct contradiction to what the Prime Minister said in the Chamber. And of course the reality is that there will have to be rules of origin checks to stop products from countries outside Europe entering the European Union via a UK free trade agreement. But secondly, I want to talk about a subject which we've aired already in this debate, where again the statements of the Prime Minister contradict directly the agreement he has negotiated. In the Withdrawal Agreement, in the Protocol on Ireland and Northern Ireland, Article 5(4) of that says, and I quote, "The provisions of Union law listed in Annex 2 to this protocol shall also apply in respect of Northern Ireland." Now, Annex 2 comprises 34 pages, and it lists what I count as being 287 separate items of EU law, which will continue to apply in Northern Ireland, but not in the rest of the UK. The honourable member for Ribble Valley was celebrating exiting the customs union. Of course, Northern Ireland will not exit the customs union. But the first of those 287 items of EU law is the European Union Customs Code, which will continue to apply in Northern Ireland after the UK has left the EU. And that is going to have very far-reaching consequences for Northern Ireland. And I pay tribute to the maiden speeches we've heard from the honourable member for North Down and also the honourable member for Belfast South, both fine speeches highlighting some of these issues. I quoted in an earlier intervention what the government's own impact assessment says. Paragraph 241, I'm going to read it again. "Goods moving from Great Britain to Northern Ireland will be required to complete both import declarations and entry summary declarations because," this is the government's own impact assessment, "because the UK will be applying the EU's Union Customs Code in Northern Ireland." So, yes, I'll gladly give way.
I appreciate the honourable friend for giving way. The issues that he has identified, does he agree with me that it clearly indicates that any business in Northern Ireland, and remember 70% of our trade is done with the rest of the United Kingdom, that the codes that he is reading out put a significant burden on doing business from Northern Ireland with the rest of our own nation, and that should really be changed if this is to go ahead?
Well, it undoubtedly does, but it's kind of hardwired into this deal that the Prime Minister has done. So what the Prime Minister means in claiming there will be no checks across the Irish Sea is frankly anybody's guess. Just read the government's own documents. The Prime Minister's statement is quite clearly untrue. The Treasury presentation on the Northern Ireland Protocol that we've been reminded of already makes the position clear. I'm going to quote it. At a minimum, it says this means that export summary declarations will be required when goods are exported from Northern Ireland to Great Britain in order to meet the EU's obligations under the SAFE framework. And it goes on in a slide in that presentation headed Economic Impact on Northern Ireland, and I quote again, "Customs declaration and documentation and physical checks on West, East and East-West trade will be highly disruptive to the Northern Ireland economy." That is the truth about where we are heading. There will be major damage to the union between Northern Ireland and Great Britain, and I must say it is one of the ironies of this. It has been directly facilitated by the party in this House whose raison d'etre is maintaining the union. So, Roger, the agreement being implemented in this bill will damage the UK. It will put the continued existence of the UK in its current form at risk, and it's going to damage the UK economy. I shall oppose it, and those who support it today will have a lot of explaining to do to their constituents as the impacts of this unfold over the years ahead.